Hey there. Welcome back. Tonight we're going to talk about how businesses grow. Not in a complicated way, not with charts or jargon, just the simple, quiet story of how something small becomes something large. You're comfortable, right? Good. Because we're going to take this slowly, moving through the different layers of how a company goes from one person with an idea to something that touches millions of lives. There's no rush here. Just a gentle walk through a process that happens all around us, all the time, usually without us noticing. So settle in, and let's just begin. Picture a single person sitting at a table. Maybe it's a kitchen table, maybe it's a desk in a small apartment. It doesn't matter much where, exactly. What matters is that this person has noticed something. A gap, a need, a small frustration in their own life or in the lives of people around them. Maybe they keep wishing something existed that doesn't exist yet. Maybe they do a job a certain way and think quietly to themselves that there must be a better way to do it. This noticing, this small and private observation, is where every business begins. Not with funding, not with a team, not with a logo or a name or a plan written down in a document. It begins with one person paying attention to something. And for a while, that observation just sits there. It lives in the back of the mind while the person goes about their days, doing other things, thinking other thoughts. But it keeps returning. It resurfaces in quiet moments, in the shower, on a commute, in that soft space between waking and sleeping. It keeps asking to be looked at. So eventually, the person looks at it more carefully. They start to turn it over, to ask themselves what it would actually take to solve this problem or fill this gap. They start to think about whether anyone else might need what they're imagining. And this is where the idea starts to become something a little more real, a little more considered. The first conversations tend to be tentative. A person mentions their idea to a friend, almost casually, almost apologetically. They frame it as a passing thought, not a serious plan. And the friend either nods politely or asks a question that hadn't been asked before, and suddenly the idea is a little more alive than it was 5 minutes ago. These early conversations are one of the quietest and most important parts of the whole process. They're the place where an idea either begins to grow roots or quietly fades away. Most ideas fade. The ones that don't are usually the ones where the person on the other side of the conversation immediately understands the problem being described, because they've felt it themselves. That recognition, that moment where someone says, yes, that's exactly something I've wondered about or struggled with, is a kind of early validation that's hard to manufacture and impossible to fake. It doesn't prove that an idea will work. It doesn't mean there's definitely a business hidden inside. But it suggests that the problem is real, that it exists outside the head of the one person who noticed it. And that matters. Because a business isn't just about solving your own problem. It's about solving a problem that other people have too, enough other people to build something sustainable around. So let's stay here for a moment, in this early phase, because it's easy to rush past it in hindsight. When people tell the stories of famous companies later, they often skip ahead to the interesting parts, the funding rounds and the famous hires and the moments of rapid growth. But the phase before any of that, The phase where it's just an idea being held carefully and tested gently against reality. That phase is long and quiet and essential. It's where the shape of everything that comes later is determined, even if it doesn't feel that way at the time. This is also the phase where research begins, though it rarely looks like research in the formal sense. It looks more like curiosity. The person with the idea starts paying attention to the space around their observation. They look for existing solutions, things already in the market that are trying to address the same problem. Sometimes they find nothing, which is interesting in its own way. And sometimes they find that there are many existing solutions, which is also interesting, because it suggests the problem is real and acknowledged, but perhaps not yet solved in the right way. The person starts to think about what those existing solutions are missing, where they fall short, what would make them better. There's a certain kind of focused wandering that characterizes this phase. The person starts reading, talking, observing. They notice things they didn't notice before because their attention has been tuned to a particular frequency. A conversation at dinner mentions something relevant. An article in a magazine touches on a corner of the problem. A product they encounter in everyday life reminds them of something adjacent to what they're thinking about. The world starts to feel like it's quietly feeding information back to them. And this isn't magic. It's just attention. When you're genuinely interested in something, you start to see it everywhere, because you're finally looking. At some point in this wandering, something tends to crystallize. The vague observation sharpens into something more specific. Instead of a broad feeling that something could be better, the person starts to have a clearer sense of exactly what they would build, what form their solution would take, what the core of it would be. This crystallization can happen suddenly, in a flash of clarity, or it can happen slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day the person realizes they've been talking about a fairly concrete idea for weeks without noticing when the vagueness gave way to specificity. And here is where something important happens. The idea, now a little more defined, starts to press back against reality in new ways. It's easy to believe in an idea when it's still vague, because vagueness can't be falsified. But as soon as the idea becomes specific, as soon as it has edges and details, it becomes possible to test it, to poke at it, to find the places where it doesn't quite hold together. Some ideas survive this process stronger than they went in. Some ideas reveal, under closer examination, that they don't actually work the way they seem to in the abstract. And discovering that early, before significant time or money has been spent, is genuinely valuable, even if it doesn't feel that way. Let's imagine our person has made it through this phase with their idea still intact, maybe reshaped a little, refined by the scrutiny it's been put through, but still fundamentally alive. Now comes the question of what to actually do next. And this is where the nature of different businesses starts to diverge, because the path from an idea to a real company looks very different depending on what kind of business it is. A business that makes physical products has a different set of early challenges than a business that delivers a service. A business built around software faces a different set of questions than one that requires a physical location. But there are some things that are common across all of them, and those are worth dwelling on. One of the most common is the question of whether to do this at all, whether to take the step from thinking about an idea to actually trying to build it. This question might seem simple, but it rarely is. Because building something takes time, and most people who are seriously considering starting a business already have a life, already have obligations, already have things they're responsible for. The decision to begin isn't just an intellectual one. It's a rearrangement of priorities, a reallocation of limited hours, a commitment to uncertainty at a time when certainty might feel more comfortable. Some people make this decision by waiting until the idea is perfect, until the timing is exactly right, until they feel fully prepared. But most people who actually start things will tell you that perfect timing never arrives on its own. That readiness is something you arrive at by beginning rather than something you achieve before beginning. There's a kind of readiness that can only be built by doing, by encountering the actual problems of building a thing rather than the imagined problems. And so, eventually, a decision gets made. Not a grand dramatic decision necessarily, but a quiet one. A commitment to try. The very first steps of trying are often surprisingly mundane. There might be some paperwork, depending on where the business is being formed and what kind of entity it will be. There might be the choosing of a name, which is both simpler and harder than it sounds, because a name has to be available and pronounceable, and in some way representative of what the thing is trying to be. There might be the setting up of a basic website or a social media presence, just enough to make the thing feel real, to give it a place in the world beyond the founder's own head. These are small tasks. They feel simultaneously trivial and momentous, because they are simultaneously trivial and momentous. The first version of almost everything is much simpler than what the thing eventually becomes. This is partly a practical matter, because building things takes resources, and resources are limited at the beginning. But it's also something deeper. It's an acknowledgement that you don't yet know exactly what you're building, not fully, not in the way you'll know it later. The first version is really a question disguised as an answer. It's the founder saying, "This is what I think is needed, now let me find out if I'm right." In the world of software and technology businesses, there's a term for this first version that has become widely used: the minimum viable product, or MVP. The idea is to build just enough to be able to test the core assumption, to find out whether the thing you're making actually solves the problem you think it solves, whether people want it, whether the fundamental insight that led you here is correct. And then to learn from what you find, and adjust. This approach, this iterative learning cycle, has been formalized into a kind of philosophy of building in recent decades. But the underlying principle isn't new. People have always been building rough first versions of things and learning from them. The language has just become more precise. For businesses that don't involve software, the equivalent might be a simple prototype, a handmade version of a product that isn't yet manufactured at scale, a service delivered in a low-tech way before the systems that will eventually support it at scale have been built. A bakery might start as a table at a farmer's market before it becomes a storefront. A consulting practice might start with one client, found through a personal connection, before it becomes a firm with a team. A company that will eventually manufacture thousands of units of something might start with a handful made by hand in a garage or a spare room. These early, simple versions serve a purpose beyond just getting something out into the world quickly. They create real feedback. And real feedback, the kind that comes from actual users or customers encountering your actual thing, is qualitatively different from the kind of feedback that comes from conversations about a hypothetical. When someone actually uses your product or service and tells you what they think, something shifts in your understanding of what you're building. The picture becomes sharper. Things you were certain about turn out to be less important than you thought. Things you assumed were minor turn out to matter enormously. The actual experience of the user is always more complex and surprising than anything you could have predicted from the outside. This is one of the reasons the early stage of building a business is so demanding, not just in terms of hours and energy, but in terms of the kind of mental flexibility it requires. You have to hold your original vision firmly enough to keep going, but loosely enough to change it when reality asks you to. This is harder than it sounds, because by the time you've gotten to the point of building something, you've thought about your idea long enough to become somewhat attached to it. The version of the idea in your head has a kind of reality to it, a kind of certainty, that makes the messier, more complicated reality of the actual thing feel disappointing by comparison. Learning to appreciate the friction of that gap, to see the places where reality diverges from your vision not as failures but as information, is one of the most important skills in this entire process. Let's talk about the first customers for a while, because they deserve attention. The very first customers of any business are a particular kind of person. They are, almost by definition, early adopters, people willing to try something that hasn't yet proven itself, that might not work, that might not be exactly right. They often come from the founder's personal network, from friends or colleagues or former clients who have enough goodwill toward the founder to give the thing a try. Or they might be people who feel the problem particularly acutely, people for whom the gap the business is trying to fill is so significant that they're willing to accept imperfection in exchange for any solution at all. These first customers are extraordinarily valuable, not just as sources of revenue, but as sources of understanding. A good founder pays enormous attention to them, not just to what they say explicitly, but to how they actually use the product or service, what they reach for first, what they ignore, where they get confused, where things click for them in ways that feel natural and obvious. The gap between what people say they want and what they actually do when they have access to a thing is one of the enduring puzzles of building anything. People are not always accurate reporters of their own preferences and behaviors. But watching how they actually interact with what you've built tells you something true and unfiltered. And sometimes, in this early observation of first customers, a founder discovers something unexpected. Maybe the people using the product aren't using it the way it was designed to be used. They'd found their own use for it, their own angle of approach, their own way of extracting value that the founder hadn't anticipated. This is sometimes frustrating and sometimes thrilling, because it can point towards something important, a hidden need, a use case that hadn't been considered, a direction worth following. Some of the most significant pivots in the history of business have come from founders paying careful attention to the ways their early customers surprised them. There's something worth pausing on here, something about the relationship between the founder's vision and the market's response. The founder usually has an idea of what their business is for, who it's serving, what problem it's solving. But the market is its own thing. It has its own opinion. And the market's opinion tends to emerge gradually, through accumulated patterns of behavior, through who actually shows up and what they actually do and what they actually pay for. Listening to this emerging opinion requires a kind of humility that doesn't always come naturally to people who are passionate about their idea. Because passion, which is necessary for getting anything built at all, can sometimes make it harder to hear things that challenge your original conception. The businesses that tend to grow are usually the ones where the founder finds a way to hold passion and receptivity simultaneously. They believe in what they're building, and they're open to being surprised about what it actually is. This sounds simple, but it's a genuine psychological feat. And it's one of the things that distinguishes founders who navigate the early stage successfully from those who don't. Now let's think about money, because money is part of this story whether we like it or not. In the very beginning, most businesses are funded by the founder themselves, or by people close to them, friends and family who are essentially investing in the person as much as in the idea. This early money is often small in absolute terms and enormous in relative terms. It's the difference between being able to take a meaningful first step and not being able to. It carries a weight that later, larger funding rounds don't always have, because it often comes from people who don't have a lot to spare, who are giving it because they believe in someone they love. Some founders bootstrap their businesses entirely, meaning they fund them through the revenue the business generates from the very beginning, keeping expenses minimal and reinvesting every dollar that comes in. This path is slower, often, and more constrained in some ways, but it has real advantages. A bootstrapped business develops a certain discipline early on, a habit of making the most of limited resources, a close attention to whether each expenditure actually generates returns. And it maintains independence in a way that taking outside investment doesn't. The founder keeps full ownership, full control, full decision-making authority. The trade-off is growth that might be slower, and the possibility of being outpaced by better-funded competitors. Other businesses, particularly those in industries where the gap between first investment and first revenue is long, or where scale matters enormously to the value of the product, seek outside investment. And the world of outside investment is itself a whole ecosystem with its own structures and rhythms and culture. At the earliest stages, the investors tend to be angels, individuals who invest their own money in early-stage companies, often because they have experience in the relevant industry and can contribute not just capital but advice and connections. Angel investors are typically taking significant risks in exchange for potentially significant returns, and they know it. They are making bets on people and ideas, with limited information and a long time horizon. A little later in the journey, as a business starts to demonstrate that its idea has some traction, that there are real customers and real revenue and real evidence that the thing works, it might attract venture capital. Venture capital is a more formal kind of investment, organized through funds that pool money from institutional investors and deploy it into companies at various stages of growth. Venture capitalists are looking for businesses that can grow very large, very fast. because their returns depend on finding the rare investments that return many multiples of the capital deployed. This means they're drawn to certain kinds of businesses more than others, particularly those with the potential for rapid scaling and large addressable markets. The relationship between a company and its investors is worth understanding because it shapes a lot of what happens next. When a company takes investment, it gives up a portion of ownership, a percentage of the equity that the founders had previously held entirely themselves. And along with that equity transfer, in many cases, comes a transfer of some degree of influence, through board seats and governance rights and the informal but real power that comes from being a significant financial stakeholder. This isn't necessarily adversarial. Many great investor-founder relationships are genuinely collaborative, with the investor contributing real value beyond just money. But it does mean that the decisions about where the company goes are no longer made by a single person or a small founding team in quite the same way they were before. There's a kind of evolution that happens to the company's story at this point. Before outside investment, the story was really the founder's story, told in the first person. Afterward, the story starts to become something more collective. And this shift in narrative mirrors a shift in the actual structure of the organization, because as a company takes on investment, it tends to grow its team. The first hires are some of the most consequential decisions a founder ever makes. Not because any single hire will make or break the business, but because the first few people set a tone, establish patterns of behavior and expectation and communication, begin to form a culture that will persist and influence everything that happens later. A culture isn't something that gets created intentionally in any comprehensive way at the beginning. It emerges from the accumulated decisions and behaviors and values of the people doing the work, especially the founders. The way a founder treats setbacks, the way they communicate under pressure, the things they prioritize and the things they let slide, all of this is observed and absorbed by the people around them, and it shapes how those people behave in turn. The early team is usually a mix of people who are generalists by necessity, because a small team doesn't have the luxury of deep specialization. Everyone wears multiple hats. The person responsible for marketing might also be managing customer relationships and helping with product decisions and occasionally helping pack orders if it's that kind of business. This multidisciplinary chaos is actually one of the things that makes early-stage companies interesting to work in for the people who thrive in them. There's a density of learning and experience that is hard to replicate later, when the organization has grown and divided itself into more specialized functions. Let's think about what happens to the product or service during this phase of early growth, because it's changing all the time. The feedback loop between the company and its customers is running faster now that there are more customers and more people paying attention to them. Improvements are being made, new features are being added, rough edges are being smoothed down. The product is starting to look more like what the founder originally imagined, in some ways, and in other ways it's becoming something quite different, something that has been shaped by the encounter with reality in ways the founder didn't fully predict. There's a quality to this phase of development that is sometimes called product-market fit, a phrase that has become somewhat overused in the vocabulary of startups and business building, but that points at something real. Product-market fit is the state where a product has found its people, where there are enough customers who genuinely need what the product offers, who keep coming back, who tell others, who would be genuinely disappointed if it went away. Before this state is reached, growth tends to feel forced and expensive, because every new customer requires significant effort to acquire and may not stay long. After it's reached, growth starts to feel more natural, because the product is generating its own momentum, its own word of mouth, its own reasons for people to share it. Reaching this state is not a single moment, not an event that happens all at once. It's more like a gradual clearing of fog. Things that were uncertain start to feel more settled. The message about what the product is and who it's for sharpens. The customer profile becomes clearer. The use cases that matter most come into focus. And there's usually a corresponding shift in the team's energy, a kind of confidence that comes from having evidence, real and accumulating evidence, that the thing works. Not every company reaches this state. Many businesses, perhaps most, operate in a zone of partial fit, where some customers are genuinely enthusiastic and others are lukewarm, where growth is possible but not effortless, where the product does the job but doesn't inspire the kind of loyalty that makes a company truly durable. Learning to operate well in this zone, to improve the product continuously and grow the customer base methodically without the tailwind of perfect fit, is its own skill, and one that many successful businesses have had to develop. As a company grows beyond its earliest phase, the nature of the challenges it faces starts to change. The problems of the very beginning, proving the idea works, finding the first customers, building a team around a vision that hasn't yet been validated, give way to different problems. Problems of scale, of maintaining quality as volume increases, of communication within an organization that is growing larger and more complex, of building the systems and processes that allow a larger number of people to work together effectively. These are not better or worse problems than the early ones. They're just different, and they require different skills and different ways of thinking. One of the most significant transitions any growing company goes through is the shift from being founder-led in a very direct, operational sense to being an organization with its own structures and layers of management. In the very beginning, the founder knows everything, is involved in everything, makes every meaningful decision. This is possible because the company is small enough for one person to hold all of it in their head. But as the team grows, as the number of products or customers or geographies increases, this direct involvement becomes impossible. There is literally not enough time in a day for one person to be in every conversation, to make every decision, to maintain the same level of personal familiarity with every aspect of the operation. The response to this challenge is the development of management, the creation of layers of people whose job is to coordinate the work of others, to translate strategy into action, to solve problems and make decisions within defined areas of responsibility. This is such an obvious and universal response to organizational growth that it's easy to take it for granted, but it represents a genuine transformation in the nature of the company. The company is no longer just an extension of the founder's vision and personality and energy. It's becoming something more like an institution, a structure with its own patterns and logic and ways of perpetuating itself. This transition is not always smooth. Founders who were extraordinary in the early stage are not always the right people to lead a larger organization, and recognizing this is one of the harder things in business, because it asks both the founder and those around them to be honest about a sensitive truth. Some founders make this transition gracefully, developing the skills of management and organizational leadership that the new phase demands. Others remain brilliant at the early stage work, while handing operational leadership to someone with different strengths. And some struggle with the transition, holding on to a mode of operating that worked when the company was smaller but creates friction as it grows. Let's step back from the internal story of the company for a moment and think about the world around it, because no business grows in isolation. It grows in a market, in a competitive landscape, in an economic environment, in a regulatory context, within a particular moment in technology or culture or consumer behavior. All of these external factors shape what's possible and what isn't, what's necessary and what isn't, what the company has to do to grow, and what it can safely ignore. Competition is one of the most constant external forces. From very early on, any business that is addressing a real problem is likely to have competitors, whether those are established players who have been serving the market for years or newer entrants who are arriving at similar insights at similar times. The existence of competition is sometimes read as a threat, and sometimes it is one. But it's also a kind of validation. Markets that attract multiple competitors are usually markets where real demand exists. The question isn't whether to compete but how, what angle of attack to take, what aspects of the problem to focus on, what kinds of customers to serve. The way a company thinks about its competitive position, what it offers that others don't, where it chooses to be better, and where it accepts being merely comparable, is often described as its strategy. Strategy is a word that can sound imposing, like something that requires formal planning processes and elaborate documentation. But in its most fundamental form, it's really just a set of choices about where to focus limited resources. Every company, even very small ones, makes strategic choices all the time, often implicitly, often without calling them strategy. Deciding which customers to prioritize, which product features to invest in, which geographies to enter, which partnerships to pursue, these are all strategic choices, and they accumulate over time into a pattern that defines what the company is and is not. The companies that grow most successfully tend to be the ones where there is some clarity about these choices, where the implicit decisions have been examined and made explicit enough to be communicated and maintained across a growing team. A company where everyone shares a clear sense of what matters most, where the energy should go, what kinds of trade-offs are acceptable, operates with a certain coherence that companies without that clarity tend to lack. The coherence doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean that the strategy can never change. But it does mean that the company isn't constantly being pulled in different directions by competing priorities. Now let's think about the role of technology in this story, because in the past several decades, technology has been a profound accelerant of business growth in ways that deserve some attention. The digital revolution, the rise of the internet and mobile computing and cloud infrastructure and data analytics, has fundamentally changed what's possible for businesses at every stage. Things that once required large teams and expensive equipment can now be done by very small teams with relatively modest resources. Reach that once required massive marketing budgets can now be achieved through a combination of digital content and social sharing. Distribution that once required physical infrastructure can now happen entirely online. These changes have lowered the barriers to starting businesses significantly. They've made it possible for businesses built around very specific niches to find their audiences, because the audience can come to them rather than requiring the business to be physically present everywhere. They've made it possible to test ideas quickly and cheaply, to get feedback in days or weeks rather than months or years. They've made it possible for businesses to be genuinely global from a very early stage, serving customers in multiple countries with a digital product that costs nothing incremental to distribute. But technology has also intensified competition in certain ways. The same tools that allow a small company to reach a large audience also allow large incumbents to observe what the small company is doing and respond. The same platforms that give new businesses access to customers are also, by their nature, controlled by other large businesses with their own interests and incentives. The distribution advantages that digital technology offers can shift quickly as algorithms change, as attention moves from one platform to another, as the economics of customer acquisition in digital channels become more expensive over time. This brings us to another aspect of growth that doesn't always get enough attention: the economics of acquiring customers. For most businesses, getting a new customer costs something. It might cost advertising spend, or it might cost the time of a salesperson, or it might cost the production of content that attracts organic attention over time. And the value of that customer, the revenue they generate over the course of their relationship with the business, needs to exceed what it costs to acquire them. This ratio, the customer acquisition cost relative to the lifetime value of the customer, is one of the most fundamental metrics in business, and it shapes everything from marketing strategy to product development to pricing. Businesses that find ways to acquire customers cheaply, through word of mouth or organic search or viral growth or other mechanisms that don't require ongoing paid investment, have a significant structural advantage. Because it means more of the revenue they generate can go into building the business, improving the product, serving customers better, rather than into the constant machine of paid acquisition. Businesses that are entirely dependent on paid acquisition are in a less comfortable position, because they're essentially renting their customers, paying for them one at a time, and if the economics of that rental shift, they can find themselves in difficulty. Let's talk about revenue and the different shapes it can take, because this is another thing that varies enormously across different types of businesses and has significant implications for how they grow. Some businesses generate revenue in a transactional way, earning money each time a customer makes a purchase, with no guarantee of that customer returning. A restaurant, a hardware store, a company that sells consumer products to retail, these are all transactional in their basic model. Their growth depends on the continuous acquisition of new customers, or on getting existing customers to return more often, or both. Other businesses generate revenue in a subscription or recurring way, earning money from customers who pay on a regular basis, monthly or annually, in exchange for ongoing access to a product or service. Software businesses often work this way, as do media companies, fitness companies, and many service businesses. The advantage of this model is predictability. A business with significant recurring revenue knows roughly how much money it will generate in the coming months, which makes planning and investment easier. The disadvantage is that it requires consistently demonstrating value to customers, continuously earning the renewal rather than earning it once at the point of initial sale. The distinction between these models shapes a great deal about how a company grows and what it has to do to grow. A subscription business needs to focus intensely on retention, on keeping customers happy enough to keep paying. A transactional business needs to focus intensely on repeat purchase or on continuous new customer acquisition. The metrics that matter, the things the team pays attention to, the investments that make sense, all of this differs depending on the revenue model. And there are other models too, businesses that generate revenue by connecting buyers and sellers and taking a portion of each transaction, like marketplaces and platforms. Businesses that offer a basic version of their product for free and charge for premium features or capacity, a model often called freemium. Businesses that monetize attention, generating revenue from advertising while offering their primary product at no cost to users. Each of these models has its own dynamics, its own relationship to growth, its own set of trade-offs. As a company moves through its growth phases and its revenue grows, it starts to think about the question of margins, the relationship between what it earns and what it costs to earn it. In the early stages, many businesses operate at a loss, spending more than they take in as they invest in building the product, building the team, building the customer base. This is acceptable and sometimes necessary, particularly in businesses where upfront investment is required to reach a scale where the economics become favorable. But at some point, the expectation is that revenues will exceed costs, that the business will become profitable. The path to profitability is not the same for every business. Some businesses are profitable from very early on, particularly those that start small, have low fixed costs, and generate revenue immediately. Others operate at a loss for years before reaching profitability, investing heavily in growth on the theory that scale will eventually make the unit economics work. The distinction between these paths has become a kind of cultural and strategic divide in certain parts of the business world, particularly in technology, where there has been significant debate about the wisdom of prioritizing growth over profitability in the early years. What is generally agreed upon is that profitability, or at least the realistic prospect of it, matters at some point. A business that generates revenue indefinitely below its costs is not a sustainable business. At some point, the economics need to work. The company needs to be able to generate more value than it consumes. The question is when and how, and the answer varies enormously depending on the nature of the business, the competitive landscape, the capital available to fund the loss period, and the judgment of the people making the decisions. Let's shift our attention for a moment to the human side of growth, because businesses don't grow by themselves, they grow because of the people in them. And as a company grows, the relationship between the people and the organization changes in ways that are worth exploring. In the earliest days, as we talked about, The team is small and everyone knows everyone else, and communication is informal, and the sense of shared purpose is immediate and obvious. The company's success or failure feels personal and immediate in a way that is both exhilarating and exhausting. As the team grows larger, this intimacy starts to give way to something more structured. People work in teams within teams. They have managers and colleagues they interact with regularly, and other colleagues they may barely know. The information that flows through the organization no longer passes through every person. It gets filtered and interpreted, and sometimes distorted as it moves through layers. Decisions that once would have been made by two people talking for 5 minutes now require meetings and documentation and approvals. This is not a failure of the organization. It's the natural consequence of scale, the inevitable complexity that comes from coordinating the work of many people rather than a few. Managing this complexity well, keeping the organization from becoming too slow or too siloed or too disconnected from the people it serves, is one of the central challenges of organizational growth. Companies develop all sorts of mechanisms for this purpose. Regular all-hands meetings where information is shared broadly, communication tools that allow people to stay connected across distance and departments, feedback processes that create channels for information to flow upward as well as downward, principles and values that are articulated clearly enough to guide decisions even when no one with authority is in the room. The articulation of values is something that happens, in some form, in almost every growing organization. It might happen through formal documents, written statements of the company's principles and what it stands for. It might happen through the stories that get told about the company's history, the decisions it made and why, the moments that revealed what it cared about. It might happen through the behaviors that are celebrated and the behaviors that are discouraged. All of these are ways of transmitting a sense of what the organization is about, of maintaining a kind of cultural coherence across a larger and more diverse group of people. Culture is a word that gets used a lot in discussions of business, often in ways that can feel abstract or even hollow. But there's something real it's pointing at. The culture of an organization is essentially the accumulated answer to the question of how things are done here. It's the shared understanding, often implicit and unspoken, of what's important, what's acceptable, what's not. And it shapes everything from how people treat customers to how they treat each other, from how they respond to setbacks to how they celebrate successes, from what risks they're willing to take to what risks feel unacceptable. Culture tends to be most legible in moments of difficulty. When things are going well, many organizational cultures can look similar from the outside, productive and friendly and ambitious. It's when things get hard, when there are setbacks or conflicts or difficult decisions to be made, that the actual culture reveals itself. The organizations where people pull together under pressure and support each other and maintain their integrity are showing you something true about themselves. And so are the organizations that do the opposite. Let's move forward in the growth story now, to a stage where the company has established itself, has a real customer base, a real team, real revenue. This is the stage often called the growth stage, though in practice every stage has its own version of growth. This is the stage where the company is large enough to have real momentum but still small enough to move quickly, where the product has been validated but there's still significant market share to capture, where the founding team has been supplemented by professional managers and specialists, where the culture is established but still being actively shaped. In this stage, a company typically begins to think more systematically about expansion. What does it mean to grow from here? The most straightforward form of expansion is simply doing more of what you're already doing, serving more customers in the same way you've been serving them. This requires investment in capacity, in the product, in the team, in the infrastructure. It's growth through execution, through doing the current thing better and at greater scale. But there are other forms of expansion that companies also pursue. Geographic expansion, taking a product or service that works in one market and introducing it to new markets in other regions or countries. This is often harder than it looks, because what works in one place doesn't always translate perfectly to another. Customer preferences differ, regulatory environments differ, competitive landscapes differ, the ways that people discover and adopt new things differ. Geographic expansion is a kind of business building challenge in its own right, and the companies that do it well tend to be those that respect the differences between markets rather than assuming that their home market experience is universal. Product expansion is another form. Taking a company that has been focused on one product or one segment of a market and introducing new products or addressing new segments. This is tempting, because once you've built the infrastructure of a business, the systems and team and customer relationships, it can feel like additional products can ride on that infrastructure at relatively low incremental cost. And sometimes that's true. But often, expanding the product portfolio requires more investment and more organizational attention than it appears to. And the risk is that the core product suffers from divided attention. There's a tension that many growing companies feel between deepening their position in their current market and broadening into new ones. Deepening means continuing to invest in what you're already doing, making it better and more compelling, serving existing customers more comprehensively. Broadening means expanding outward, taking on new challenges, addressing new opportunities. Both have their logic. Deepening protects the core business and builds loyalty. Broadening reduces dependence on a single product or market and creates new sources of growth. The right balance varies by company and circumstance, but it's a tension that rarely fully resolves. As companies grow through this middle stage, they start to think about their competitive position in more formal ways. They may commission research to understand their market more precisely. They may bring in consultants to think about strategy. They may establish formal planning processes that set goals and allocate resources across the organization in a more systematic way. This formalization is necessary in some ways, because a larger, more complex organization can't operate entirely on informal understanding and individual judgment. But it also carries risks, because formalization can create rigidity, can slow down response to change, can substitute process for genuine thought. The best companies in this stage find ways to maintain the entrepreneurial speed and flexibility of their early days within the constraints of a larger organization. They protect spaces where experimentation is encouraged and failure is accepted as part of learning. They push decision-making authority down to the people who are closest to the customers and the problems, rather than concentrating it at the top. They stay genuinely curious about what's changing in their market and are willing to challenge their own assumptions rather than defending the choices that worked in the past. There's a phase in the growth of many companies that's sometimes described as reaching escape velocity, a point at which the momentum of the business becomes largely self-sustaining, where the customers and the reputation and the product quality and the team are all reinforcing each other in ways that create a kind of gravitational pull. New customers come partly because existing customers recommend them. Talented people join the team partly because of the reputation the team has already built. The product improves partly because the revenue it generates funds continued investment. This is the stage that the very early idea was always pointing toward, even if it was impossible to see it clearly from there. Not every company reaches this stage. Many good businesses grow to a certain size and plateau, finding a stable level at which they can operate sustainably but below which the dynamics of self-reinforcing growth don't fully take hold. There's nothing wrong with this. A stable, profitable business that serves its customers well and treats its people well and operates with integrity is genuinely valuable, regardless of whether it ever becomes a household name or a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. The culture of business building in certain circles, particularly in technology and venture capital, sometimes implies that any outcome short of massive scale is a disappointment. But this is a narrow and somewhat distorted perspective. Most businesses, including very successful ones, are simply good businesses that do their thing well in their part of the world. For the ones that do continue to grow towards significant scale, there are typically moments of decision about financing. A company that has reached meaningful size and demonstrated consistent growth may find itself thinking about whether to raise a larger round of investment that would allow it to accelerate further, or about whether to list its shares on a public stock exchange, which would allow it to raise capital from a much broader pool of investors and would also create a liquid market for the equity held by founders and early investors and employees. The decision to go public is one of the most significant transitions in the life cycle of a company, and it changes things in fundamental ways. A public company is subject to a whole set of reporting requirements and regulatory obligations that private companies are not. It has shareholders who are not just long-term investors but traders, people who might hold the shares for minutes or months rather than years, who respond to quarterly earnings results and analyst opinions and market sentiment in ways that have little to do with the long-term fundamentals of the business. This can create pressure to manage for short-term results in ways that may not always be aligned with what's best for the business over a longer horizon. But going public also provides real benefits beyond the capital it raises. It increases the company's visibility and credibility. It creates a currency, the company's stock, that can be used for acquisitions. It provides liquidity for early stakeholders who have been patient through years of building. And it creates a kind of accountability, in that public companies are required to be transparent about their finances in ways that private companies are not. Many of the most famous large companies in the world, the ones that have become genuinely culturally significant, navigated this transition from private to public at some point in their histories. The transition itself is often marked by a kind of ritual, the IPO, the initial public offering, the first day on which the company's shares trade on an exchange. These days often generate significant media attention and are sometimes treated as defining moments in a company's story. But they're really just one more step in a process that began long before and continues long after. Let's think about acquisitions for a moment, because they're another significant mechanism of growth that many companies use. An acquisition is when one company buys another. The acquiring company pays for the target company, usually in cash or in its own stock or some combination, and absorbs the target into its own organization. Companies acquire other companies for many reasons: to gain access to a product or technology that would be difficult or slow to build internally, to enter a new market more quickly than organic growth would allow, to acquire talent, particularly in industries where certain technical skills are rare, to eliminate a potential competitive threat, or simply to add to their revenue and customer base. Acquisitions are, in theory, a way to accelerate the journey that each of the acquired companies was on independently. But they are famously difficult to execute well. The combination of two organizations, each with its own culture, its own systems, its own ways of doing things, its own set of loyalties and identities, is an enormously complex undertaking. Many acquisitions fail to generate the value that was expected of them, not because the underlying logic was wrong, but because the organizational integration was harder than anticipated, because key people left rather than staying through the transition, because the cultures were incompatible in ways that weren't visible from the outside. The acquisitions that tend to work best are often the ones where the acquirer has genuine respect for what the acquired company has built, where the integration is approached thoughtfully rather than hastily, where the people of the acquired company feel that their work and their identity are being honored rather than erased. As a company reaches genuine scale, as it becomes one of the larger players in its market or in the broader economy, the nature of its relationship with the world around it also changes. Large companies interact with regulators and governments in ways that small companies don't. They attract scrutiny from journalists and researchers and advocacy groups. Their decisions have effects that extend beyond their own employees and customers, into communities and supply chains and broader social systems. These stakeholders, the people who are affected by a large company's decisions without necessarily being its customers or employees, have come to be understood as a kind of constituency that large companies increasingly need to think about. This shift in how large companies are understood, from being purely private entities accountable only to their shareholders to being institutions that bear some responsibility to a broader set of interests, has been one of the more significant developments in the conversation about business over the past several decades. The debate about what companies owe to society, beyond generating returns for shareholders and providing useful products and services to customers, is ongoing and genuinely complex. There are no easy answers, but the questions themselves, about the relationship between scale and responsibility, between profit and purpose, between private interest and public good, are worth sitting with. Let's come back to something more elemental for a moment, something that tends to get lost in conversations about strategy and capital and scale. The reason any of this works at all, The reason businesses grow from small ideas into large institutions is because they are creating value for people. Not always, not every business succeeds in genuinely doing that, but the ones that grow sustainably, that earn loyalty and recommendation and repeat business, are the ones where real value is being exchanged. A customer who keeps coming back is a customer who is getting something from the exchange that they couldn't easily get elsewhere. An employee who stays and gives their best is an employee who feels that the work is meaningful and that the organization treats them fairly. An investor who stays committed through difficulty is an investor who believes in the long-term value being created. This is the invisible engine underneath all the visible machinery of business growth. Not the funding rounds and the hires and the product launches, but the accumulated quality of the exchanges that happen between the company and all the people it touches. And it's invisible in the sense that it doesn't always appear in the metrics that get talked about most loudly. Customer satisfaction, employee engagement, community impact, these are harder to measure than revenue and profit, and they're often underweight in discussions of business performance as a result. But they're the foundation on which everything else rests. There's a long tradition of thinking about business that emphasizes this foundation, that says the purpose of a business is not profit, but the delivery of something genuinely useful, and that profit is what you get when you do that well over time. This view doesn't romanticize business or ignore the genuine importance of financial sustainability. It just places the financial outcomes in their proper context, as results that emerge from doing the underlying work well, rather than as ends in themselves. The businesses that become genuinely durable, the ones that last decades and sometimes centuries, are usually the ones where there is some version of this clarity, some understanding of what the business is actually for, some commitment to creating value for people as the primary orientation rather than as a means to financial ends. This doesn't make those businesses simple or conflict-free. Large, durable companies face all the same challenges of competition and regulation and organizational complexity as any other large company. But they face those challenges with a coherence of purpose that helps them navigate without losing themselves. Let's take a wider view for a moment and think about the patterns we can see across many different companies and many different industries over many different time periods. One of the most striking patterns is how consistent the underlying human story is, even as the surface details vary enormously. Every successful business, from the smallest bakery to the largest technology company, was once just an idea in someone's head. Every one of them went through a phase of uncertainty, of testing and learning and adjusting. Every one of them depended, at some point, on someone taking a chance, whether that was an early customer who decided to try something new or an early employee who chose to join something unproven or an early investor who bet on a person and an idea without certainty of outcome. Another striking pattern is the role of timing. Businesses that succeed are almost always businesses that arrived at the right moment, when a particular technology had matured enough, when a particular cultural shift had made people ready for something new, when the economic conditions created an opening. This doesn't mean that timing is everything, or that a poorly executed business can succeed simply by being in the right place at the right time. But execution and timing together are more powerful than either alone, And many great ideas have failed simply because they arrived too early or too late. The question of what makes the right moment is worth thinking about, because it's something that the most observant founders seem to have a kind of intuition for, even if they can't always articulate it explicitly. They can sense when something is about to shift, when a technology, or a behavior, or a cultural attitude is on the cusp of becoming mainstream, when the timing is opening up. This intuition is built from paying close attention to the world over time, from being genuinely curious about how things work and why things change, from having the kind of mental models that allow you to see patterns before they become obvious. There's another pattern worth noting: the role of luck. This is a topic that is sometimes uncomfortable in discussions of business success, because the dominant cultural narrative tends to emphasize skill and vision and hard work as the primary explanations for who succeeds. And those things matter, genuinely. But luck also matters, in ways that are easy to underestimate. Being in the right city at the right time, meeting the right person through an apparently random connection, having a competitor stumble in a way that opens up a market, avoiding a disaster by a matter of chance, these things happen. The companies that succeed are not always the best executed or the most brilliantly conceived. Sometimes they're just the ones that caught a few lucky breaks at the right moments, combined with enough competence and resilience to take advantage of those breaks. Acknowledging this doesn't diminish anyone's accomplishment. It just keeps the story honest, and it has a useful implication. It suggests that the people who succeed in building businesses are not necessarily uniquely exceptional, not a category apart from everyone else. They are people who worked hard and thought carefully and, at some points, got fortunate. Which means the distance between the person sitting at the kitchen table with an idea and the person running a successful company is not infinite. It's a lot of work and a lot of learning and some timing and some luck, but it's not a magic that only certain people possess. Let's think about failure for a moment, because it's impossible to talk honestly about business growth without talking about it. Most businesses fail, not eventually, but in the near term. Most ideas that get started don't make it. This is a fact of business life that is worth sitting with, not in a discouraging way, but in a realistic one. The failure rate is high because the challenge is genuinely difficult, because building something from nothing that other people value enough to pay for, in a world full of alternatives and competing priorities and uncertainty, is hard. Not impossible, but hard. The experience of failure, of building something and watching it not work, is something that many successful founders have in their histories. Some have failed multiple times before finding something that worked. And the relationship between failure and success in business is not simple. Failure doesn't automatically produce wisdom. Failing at something doesn't guarantee you'll understand why it failed or that the lessons will transfer to whatever comes next. But intentional reflection on failure, the genuine effort to understand what went wrong and why, can produce genuine learning that informs what comes after. There's a certain quality in the culture of certain business communities, particularly in technology and venture capital, of celebrating failure as a badge of experience, of making it part of the resume rather than something to be hidden. This has some merit, in that it reduces the stigma of failure and makes it possible for people to try again after something doesn't work. But it can also become a kind of performance, a way of talking about failure without really grappling with it. The most useful kind of engagement with failure is quieter and more private. The honest accounting of what you tried, what happened, and what you might do differently. Now let's think about the role of vision in the long arc of a company's growth. Vision is another word that gets used a lot in business discussions, sometimes with reverence, and sometimes with skepticism. What does it actually mean for a company to have vision? At its simplest, vision is a story about the future, a description of what the world could look like if the company succeeds in building what it's building. It's the horizon toward which all the current work is oriented, and it serves several purposes. For the people building the company, vision provides direction. When there are many possible ways to spend time and resources, the vision is what helps prioritize. Decisions about what to build next, which customers to pursue, which opportunities to take and which to pass on, all of these become cleaner when there is a clear picture of where things are heading. Not because the vision is always right, not because the future is predictable, but because having a direction, even an imperfect one, is better than having no direction at all. For customers, vision communicates something about what the company stands for, what it's trying to accomplish beyond the immediate product or service. Customers who share the company's vision tend to be more loyal, more forgiving of mistakes, more likely to advocate on the company's behalf. They feel like they're part of something, contributing to an outcome they believe in, rather than just making a transactional purchase. For employees, vision is motivating in a way that job descriptions and compensation structures are not. People want to feel that their work matters, that it's connected to something larger than the immediate tasks in front of them. A compelling vision gives them that connection, provides a reason to invest more deeply and stay committed through difficult periods. It makes the inevitable frustrations and setbacks feel less like reasons to give up and more like part of a journey that's worth completing. But vision, to be useful rather than merely decorative, needs to be grounded in some realistic understanding of what's achievable. Vision that is too disconnected from reality becomes delusion. The companies that get into serious trouble because of false or inflated visions, the ones that make promises they can't keep, that project futures that are not coming, that substitute story for substance, these are cautionary examples of what happens when vision loses its tether to reality. The best visions are ambitious enough to be genuinely inspiring and grounded enough to be genuinely achievable, which is a difficult balance to maintain but an important one. Let's talk about the role of branding and reputation in the growth of a company, because these things matter more than they are sometimes given credit for. A brand is essentially the set of associations and feelings and expectations that people carry with them when they think about a company. It's not the logo or the color palette, those are just surface manifestations. The brand is deeper. It's the sum of every interaction and impression, the accumulated effect of all the choices the company has made about how to present itself and how to behave. A strong brand makes everything easier. It makes it easier to acquire customers, because people who already trust your brand have a lower barrier to trying your products. It makes it easier to retain employees, because talented people want to work for organizations they respect. It makes it possible to charge premium prices, because people are willing to pay more for something they trust. It provides a kind of resilience in difficult times, because a company with a strong reputation can absorb setbacks that would be fatal to a company without that buffer of goodwill. Building a strong brand is a long process. It happens through consistent behavior over time, through delivering on promises reliably, through treating people well in small moments as well as large ones, through being honest about failures and proactive about making them right, through standing for something clearly enough that people know what to expect. It's not primarily about marketing, though marketing can amplify a brand that is already being built through substance. And it can't be manufactured or rushed. Trust accumulates slowly, through repeated experience, and erodes quickly, through betrayal or negligence. The reputations that companies build over time are genuinely hard to create and genuinely fragile in the face of significant missteps. The most durable companies are usually the ones that have internalized this, that understand their reputation as something precious that was built over years and that needs to be protected in every decision, large and small. And the companies that lose the trust they once had, through dishonesty or neglect or a series of poor choices, often find that it is extraordinarily difficult to recover. People remember how they were treated and they share those memories with others. And in the age of the internet and social media, the velocity with which reputational damage can spread has increased enormously. Let's move toward thinking about what a mature, established company looks like, the kind that has been around for decades and has woven itself into the fabric of its industry and perhaps of the broader culture. These companies are a particular kind of institution. They have histories that are longer than the tenure of any individual person currently working there. They have customers who have been with them for years or decades. They have ways of doing things that have been tested and refined over long periods. They have accumulated knowledge and relationships and capabilities that are not easily replicated. But mature companies also carry a kind of risk that younger ones don't, the risk of becoming too comfortable with what has always worked, too invested in the current approach to notice when the environment is shifting. The history of business is full of companies that were dominant for decades and then lost their position, not because they were poorly managed in any obvious way, but because they were slow to recognize that the game was changing around them. Technologies that seemed marginal became central. Customer preferences that seemed stable shifted. Competitors that seemed small became significant. And the companies that were too confident in their current position, too comfortable in their established way of doing things, found themselves behind. This is sometimes called the innovator's dilemma, the paradox by which success can make it harder to innovate, because the very capabilities and commitments that created the success also create resistance to the kinds of changes that future success might require. A company that has built a large business around one technology finds it hard to invest heavily in a different technology that might make the first one obsolete, even if the second technology is clearly the future. The current business generates the returns that fund the organization, and protecting it feels like the rational priority. Until it doesn't. The companies that navigate this dilemma well are usually the ones that find ways to maintain a kind of internal entrepreneurialism, to create spaces within the larger organization where new things can be tried with some insulation from the short-term pressures of the core business. They invest in understanding where the world is going even when that understanding challenges their current position. They cultivate leaders who are willing to make uncomfortable bets on the future rather than comfortable ones on the present. And they try to maintain the quality of curiosity and openness that characterized them when they were small, even as they've grown large. This is genuinely difficult. The organizational gravity of a large company pulls toward consistency and optimization and risk reduction. The very processes that make a large company efficient, the standardization, the specialization, the planning cycles, the governance structures, these are the same things that can make it slow and conservative. There's no easy resolution to this tension. But the companies that manage it best seem to be the ones where the people at the top are genuinely committed to it, who understand that maintaining the capacity for renewal and adaptation is as important as maintaining the current business, and who are willing to devote real attention and real resources to that commitment. Let's come back, after all of this, to the beginning of the story, to the person sitting at the table with an idea. Because in some ways the entire arc we've described is the elaboration of that single moment. The idea becomes a product, the product finds customers, the customers fund a team, the team builds systems, the systems support scale, the scale creates an institution. All of that complexity, all of that organizational and financial and strategic machinery, is in some sense the scaffolding that grows up around that original impulse, that original observation about something that could be different, something that could be better. And what's interesting, what's worth thinking about as you drift into the quiet of the night, is how little any of it was predetermined. At every stage, there were choices, countless small choices about what to build, and who to hire and where to focus and what to let go of. And every one of those choices was made under uncertainty, by imperfect people with incomplete information, trying their best to navigate towards something good. The companies that turn out well are not the ones where everything was decided correctly from the beginning. They're the ones where the imperfect choices were made with good intentions and genuine care, where course corrections happened when they needed to, where the people involved maintained their integrity and their curiosity and their commitment to actually creating value for the people they were serving. There's something almost ordinary about this, when you look at it this way. Not ordinary in the sense of being unimpressive, but ordinary in the sense of being humanly achievable. Not magical, not reserved for a special category of person, but the result of sustained attention and effort and learning over time. The businesses that grow from nothing into something significant are usually, at their core, the ones where people cared enough to keep going, to keep learning, to keep trying to do the thing better. That care, quiet and persistent and not always visible from the outside, is the engine behind everything else. The story of how companies grow is really, in its deepest form, a story about human beings trying to make things that matter to other human beings. About the attempt to create something from nothing, to solve a problem, to fill a gap, to build something that lasts. It happens all over the world, in every industry, in every economic system, in every era of human history. The forms it takes change with the times, with the available technologies and the prevailing cultural norms and the economic conditions of the moment. But the underlying story remains the same. Someone notices something, decides to try to do something about it, and begins. And in the space between that beginning and whatever it eventually becomes, there is a long, quiet, mostly invisible process of building and learning and adjusting and growing, one small step at a time, one day at a time, one decision at a time. It's not always dramatic. It's not always exciting in the moment. But it's one of the most persistent and characteristic things that human beings do, this building of organizations around shared purposes, this accumulation of collective effort in service of something useful. And it goes on, continuously, all around us, in businesses large and small, in ideas just beginning to form and in institutions with histories stretching back generations. It's a quiet kind of story, really. And it's one that never quite ends, because there's always another person, somewhere, sitting at a table with a new idea, beginning the whole long, patient journey again. Rest now. There's nothing more to figure out tonight. The world keeps building itself, slowly and steadily, and you can let all of that happen without you for a while. Let your thoughts slow down. Let the details of everything we've talked about drift gently into the background, the way all ideas do when sleep finally comes. The companies and the founders and the customers and the teams, all of it fades, and what remains is just the quiet fact of things being built, slowly and with care, in the world. And that's more than enough to carry with you into sleep.